Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm finally back in the shop after a small stomach illness. It took me out for like a week, but we got a ton of work to do and not a lot of time left to do it. Thank you all so much again for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing because it helps me a ton on the business end. We just crested 400 subscribers, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a heck of a lot, but it is progress. And I appreciate every single one of you that has so far. Please tell your racing friends. Help get them on board because it's free for you to do. Doesn't cost you a dime. I'm not asking anything more of you than just clicking a button and helping me out a ton because that does on the business end quite a bit. I want to keep getting that number up just so I can have a faceless corporation pay for my race car instead of you guys or myself. So if you're wondering why I wasn't in the shop for the last week or so, I appreciate your concerns, but I think I had food poisoning or something. But I went, and this is kind of TMI, but I was in the bathroom, I think 20 times in 2 days. So here, let me show you a dramatic reenactment of me trying to go to the garage. Oh, no, not again. No. So yeah, I couldn't make it in the shop. Oh well. You gotta take care of yourselves, so it's getting to be crunch time. I mean, we're less than a month now. Like, it is March 6th as of recording this. I'm not that worried because I got the suspension on, I got to tighten the rear, I got to put the brake lines on, it's basically complete. Like, if I needed to race this car right now, I could go like this, rip the windshield off, put the radiator in and bleed the brakes, throw it on scales. Like, that's it. That's all I would really have to do. However, there's a lot that I really need to do in order to get this thing on the racetrack. And namely, that would be putting the rear end together. Well, not putting it together, but making sure that it's not falling apart, I guess is the right way to say that. There is some slop in the rear that you could see. Well, you can't really see because you can't see the other side. But I want to make sure that that's not coming apart. I don't think it's the ring and pinion, which is what I actually built. I think it might be other parts. I got to go in there and look at it. I have plans to do work on the other Ford 9-inch rears that I have and get my jig figured out. But that's kind of been put on the back burner for now. I got to get this car ready. I'm going to do letters, but that's going to be another episode because that's going to be fun in itself. Today, we're going to be working on rear end, and we're going to be fitting the radiator back under the hood because I lowered the hood that 1 inch. That means the upper mount for the radiator is now down an inch, so I might have to drop the radiator an inch, and there might be a lot of other problems otherwise. If you see this behind here, this might have to come out because I might have to drop the radiator down, and if I drop it down, then the neck for the radiator cap might be too low, and I might have to resort to this. So why don't we take a look at that? Over here, like I said, we went from up here to now over here because I had a lot of height that I could play with. So I wanted to get the nose down a little bit, but we got the hood pins and stuff assembled and put on. However, this hood pin comes with the radiator mount, but I dropped the radiator down an inch. So now I'm thinking, oh crap, now the lower mounts might have to go down. And I don't know if they can go down. That's the problem. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, do I cut this and make a new one? Or do I cut those and drop it down? And I don't know if I can do that either. So I'm kind of on the fence with it right now. I think I can drop that down an inch. It's not a lot because it is pulled up a little bit here. I bet you I could drop that. And my problem is now, is that radiator going to be lower than this cap? And if it is, oh boy, then we are going to be doing some work with the spool gun because I don't have 2 radiator caps that I can just throw on the radiator and hope for the best. Plus, I don't want 2 failure points in the cooling system. I only want 1. So what I did was I went to Home Depot and bought me some 1/8 inch by 2 by 3 foot pieces of aluminum. I was going to cut a little square off of it, cut the radiator cap off, stick that on top of the radiator and zip it on with my spool gun. Luckily, I got one there, I got one there, and I got another spare in the trailer that I take to the racetrack. So if necessary, I can practice, you know, and especially with the one that I had earlier, I can take that one off the wall and I can just start slapping holes in it and start sticking pieces over it and see if that works. Or I can cut it up for scrap aluminum. I don't know. But at least I can get some practice. I've been reading some stuff online about it and how to do it properly. And I think I can do it with a little bit thicker material like what I have. So if we need to do that, we can do that. And that's not going to be a big deal. Hopefully it doesn't leak. But we'll get it tested regardless, no matter what happens. But I got to get out to the trailer, grab my radiator, and start fitting this thing. And I got to open the door because it's colder in here than it is outside. 50 degrees in my butt. You got to be kidding me. All right, let's see where this thing fits or how it fits. Yeah, it's at least 1 inch too low or too high. And the hood probably is going to impact it here, I think. Right, so I think we got to drop it down 1 inch or as far as it'll go. And I might have to play with this mount. And I think I'm going to have to cut this off. That stinks. I mean, I can make it something kind of just tossed together, but I really want to just do it right, you know? Isn't that the point? You want to do it right? So I got it finagled in here. I got some new foam, well, roll bar padding pieces I can move, and just in case it moves forward, I can use it for bumper material and so it doesn't smash into stuff. I got this mount here, and I got that on properly, but again, I think the issue remains that it is lower. I don't know if we can see this, but it is lower than the hose for the outlet on top of the engine. So I want it to be lower than the hood and the front end, and we got that. And I want it to be clean, but the problem is it's this. I don't want 2 radiator caps. And now that I have the means to do aluminum welding and I need the practice, well, I'm going to go grab me a scrap radiator. Everybody, if you remember the spare radiator that I practiced with my spool gun on. I believe what I did before was there was 3 puncture marks in the bottom. It might be on this side. Nope, it's over here. And I have no idea if they actually worked or not. So, unfortunately, this radiator has already had the cap covered off. I'll just cut another hole with a hole saw and just take this and cut it and cap it and just keep practicing until I can actually figure it out. I don't want to screw up the regular piece, and I'm going to have to do the spare in the trailer as well. So I want to get it right, and I want to do it right, and I want to learn. So we're going to use this one because I think it's already punctured here. And I could fix that with JB Weld. I've done that plenty of times, but I need something to practice on. Ooh, there's a nice cap there. Anyway, I got to get this done. We got to get moving. I got to switch this thing over to the spool gun and get my argon bottle replaced on there and get this started. Okay, this is my first attempt, really, at practicing on a radiator. Don't judge too harshly. This is kind of where I had a hole, so I screwed that up. This is where I started, so I screwed that up. But once I started to get it, it's honestly around here and down here, not so bad. I mean, it ain't this by any stretch of the imagination. I'll figure it out. But I just don't have the technique yet. I don't have the settings yet. I'm not really that familiar with it, but we're getting there. You can see we're making progress. I know that aluminum welding, you can't really fill a hole very well. Figured that one out. Oh, I also figured out, on the other hand, that you got to protect the damn radiator because there's slag all over the place. I thought that this was flux core wire for some reason. I'm like, no, it can't be flux, really? So I looked at it and it just said aluminum MIG wire. So I'm like, okay, well, now I'm confused because it welds like flux, which is really weird to me. I had to take this thing apart. It's hard to do one-handed, so I took this nut off, which holds the spool on, and I checked to make sure that this, because it wasn't feeding. It wasn't pushing wire out at one point, so I got frustrated. And I pulled this apart, and I figured out that this nut needs to be a little bit loose, because if you tighten it too much, now it won't spin as well. So obviously you can't leave it loose, but you know, you can't tighten the damn thing down. This will be retained by the outside of the housing, and so it will actually feed wire. Anyway, I am not comfortable enough yet, after only one attempt, to make any sort of alterations to what I currently have. So I'm going to probably hack this poor radiator up a bunch more and try to dial my settings in. I could literally play around with this thing all day, but I would use up what little 2-pound spool that I have, what little argon that I have in that tiny little bottle, and what material I have. I think I've gotten to the point where I'm comfortable enough to try it on my spare radiator. I'm not sure exactly what I want to do to cut it off and replate it or what, but I'm going to cross that bridge when we come to it. I got to dig it out of the trailer. Then I got to find some cardboard or some wood to place over it so I don't ruin it. You know, that didn't work out as badly as I'd hoped, or at least thought. I used the grinder with a cutting wheel to get it started so that I wouldn't take any material off of the body itself. I would try to take it off of this. And then I used a Sawzall blade with a 14 tooth on it because you got to get some material moving. The aluminum will definitely clog up anything lower than that, or higher than that, I should say. But yeah, I got it off, and it looks like I just got to do a little bit of cleanup right here because I cut through the weld and not through the top, which is good. I'm feeling it around the edge, and it's, I don't know, it feels pretty robust, so I'm not worried about blowing through it. I just got to get it smoothed out, cleaned up, get a piece cut for it, and try slapping her on and see what happens. Got the piece cut. Gonna line her up, get it as clean as humanly possible, and hopefully something comes out of this that's good. Wish me luck. It doesn't look bad. I'll be quite honest with you. It looks a little hot, like I said before, but I can't really figure out the settings enough to make it exactly what I want, but I don't want it to not penetrate either. Like, this side looks pretty good. It's kind of an awkward angle. I think the next time I do it, I'll probably change the angle, but I think it's worth a try at least, you know? I don't even see any problems with it. I might see if I can cap these off and put some soap and water and run an air hose through it. I don't know. I got to put some rubber on it and, you know, clamp it off somehow up here, and, you know, and soap and water and air pressure. I mean, 120 psi is probably pretty good. So we'll do that, and hopefully this thing should be good to go. And if it's good to go, I'm doing the race one. So here's what I came up with to help me test this radiator. I got a petcock here that I can blow air into. No big deal. That fits this really well. You throw it in there, no problem. Upper radiator hose, I got a transmission yoke with some rubber hose clamped to it. And in this, I don't know what that is. Spackling putty? I don't know. But it fit in this hose. So I jammed her on in there and clamped it down. And now, if I blow air into the petcock, that's a lot of pressure coming out of this thing. All right, so I got the world's crappiest spray bottle that barely sprays. And I got some Blue Dawn in there, and we got soapy water. And I will real time test this thing to see if it blows bubbles and holds air. Okay, let's see if she blows air. Wow, or sprays water, I guess. Good enough. Oh, my spackling putty. But I got a result. Got a couple little pinholes over here. I'll have to find something else other than my spackling putty. Well. Oh, it was wood filler. Huh. Oh well. Wasn't very good wood filler. Seems to be kind of dried up. I'll have to find something else to stick in there because this is obviously not good enough. And it took like 100 psi. So, okay. I got a little here and down here. So I got a little work to do, but that's not bad. The rest of it was clean until the wood putty kind of went firing off. So I guess I got to find another more solid thing. This held in there really well. Take two. I've got a shock absorber now. It fits perfectly. Like, look at that, huh? It'll probably go flying out and completely brain me. And my brother will be here in about an hour or two. He'll find my dead body on the floor from a head injury. But I'll at least get the job done, but then nobody will know it. But whatever. All right, so let's try this again. This time I'll just kind of pump a little air in at a time. There we go. That's bad. But it's only bad on one side for some reason. It's not here or here in the really boogery spots. No, it's here on this corner that looks like it's welded. And down here where it looks like it's welded. So I'll just build up a whole ton of weld after I dry this off and clean it off with brake parts cleaner. And then dry it off again because it'll burst into flames the second I try to weld it, which I've already been on fire yet again today. You'd be surprised how many times I catch fire. But we'll get it cleaned up around this edge here, this edge here. Hey, you know what? We'll just weld this whole U shape down at the bottom. This is why I did this. Because I need to know for sure. And if I'd put that in my race car thinking, it's fine, we'd be out on the racetrack overheating because it's spraying water all over the place. So that's why I did that. I think we got it now. It's easy to trick yourself when spraying bubbles and checking for leaks like this because, in my mind, I don't think anybody's ever told me this, but it's something that I've kind of figured out. If you spray and you see bubbles, you think there's a leak, but you have to look for active bubbles. You have to look for them, like, see, there's bubbles here, but, like, there's no pressure in the tank. So if you pressurize the tank and you see bubbles actively coming out and creating foam like in that earlier shot, that means you got a problem. So I think this one's good to go. It was a good practice. And now it's time for the tough one. Moment of truth. Got my piece cut. Got this cleaned up. I'm apparently peeing water all over the place. That's fantastic. Oh, there's more. Great. Yeah, let's have more. Anyway, I got this cut. I'm going to slap that on there. I'm going to cover that up so it doesn't get slag all over it and hopefully not create another leak. And then pray for me. I'm so glad I shut the cameras off because you would have seen an endless amount of time lapse for a complete debacle. You can see this wasn't so bad. This wasn't so bad. There's some cut marks in this one for some reason, but this one wasn't really that bad either. And there's 2 layers over here, which actually look halfway decent. Well, there's a reason for that. Apparently, during setting up and filming and doing stuff and welding at the same time, I accidentally dropped something and it hit, or I picked something up. I don't know what happened, but this switch got switched to there, which is not the right one. That's the TIG setting. And so the weld got screwed up, and I literally had to sit here for like an hour and cut it out by hand with the old Big Chief and very gingerly take that whole thing out, keep spraying it. By the way, I threw my sprayer out because it pissed me off so bad. There's no petcock in this one. So what I did was I actually drilled a hole in the top of this, which was easier than I thought it was going to be. And now I just spray air through there. The shock's still holding in there, has not flown into the ceiling yet, unlike my wood filler. So we got this finally pressure tested out. It finally worked. Nothing like striking out at bottom of the ninth, when the bases are loaded. When it actually counts, you completely screw it up. But you know what? That happens. It's not like I made a mistake on purpose. It's something that was unforeseen, and I didn't even know it happened. Something just hit a button and switched the setting, and I don't know. It just sucks, but whatever. But I got this, which I'm reaching for, fixed up. This is the upper radiator support. Now, I bought this from, I think, Speedway, and it had this little whoop-de-doo in it back here, but it didn't have this tab to hold the radiator from falling forward if you hit something, like if I smash into somebody, which is common if you've seen anything from the past on this channel. So I put that tab on there, and it actually turned out really well. Like, I cleaned it up because the weld was a little too thick, so I wanted to polish that down, and that holds the whole radiator in really well. Now I got to get to work on, which is this thing that I showed you before. It's got like 15 block offs in it, which is gross, and I really hope they work because I have some, but I don't have the right one. Like this one would work here, but these are too big, and these are just threads. I don't know why they're here. This is just an extension. This isn't even a block off. I don't know, whatever. Maybe I'll go to the Home Depot or wherever and part store and just find some stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's just fine the way it is. I'm just sick of, I don't want it to be ugly, you know, but whatever. It's going to be fine. Luckily, I got this nice upper plate, which is a CSR product, and it's got like good bolts for it and O-rings in the bottom of it, which I'm going to completely cover in RTV anyway. So we're going to put that on. So when we get that upper radiator cap and hose mount stuck to the intake of the engine, we can finally install the radiator, get that out of harm's way from the garage and being in the trailer with all the stuff that's in there. Once all that's out of harm's way, we can move to the back, get to work on the rear end, and inspect that. Well, that was a complete pain. Not this part. This part was easy. Throw some goop on it, tighten her down, good to go. This upper hose didn't fit anymore for some reason. I don't know why. I guess dropping the radiator down 1 inch was a complete no-no in the eyes of the car. So I had to redo that, cut that hose because it was pointing out over here, and kind of piece it back together. The lower hose was a complete pain, just because it always is, because the outlet for a short water pump, which is what these pulleys run off of, goes that way instead of that way where it belongs. If you had a long water pump, it would go the right way and you'd be able to actually make a freaking lower fit. But alas, here we are. All right. I got the wiring to do because I took the ground off of here. There's a little bit of a gap going on here with the ductwork, which I'll work on in future. I got to get a top piece here so the air doesn't just escape all around the radiator. And that should do it for the front, besides putting belts on it and getting the spark plugs put back on. Obviously set. Back in the shop, it's the next day. I got to hop under the rear end here and get that pulled apart to inspect it. I'm not really thinking that there's some kind of problem with it. I just want to get in there and make sure that all the parts are working properly. I don't want something to end my weekend prematurely because I don't have the Ford 9 inches fixed up yet, because if you remember back last year when I rebuilt those rear ends and I put new mounts on them, I kind of measured them off the car to make sure that they were in square, and I did not know that the car wasn't square at the time. So now I'm wondering if those mounts are not square, so I can't trust them. So what I can trust is a stock rear that I've got back in the car, because I made sure that that was straight and all the mounting points are still factory, as all the mounts are on the car. So I want to get in there. I want to make sure everything's all right. Nothing's going to come apart. It does feel looser than when I built it, but I just want to make sure it's worthy to make sure, and I don't want a problem to kill my weekend. So we're going under there. I'll throw you guys on time lapse, and you can at least watch me work at the speed of light. Under here, and I'm noticing something a little bit concerning. I was seeing a back here slightly machined edge on this brake rotor, caliper, whatever, and I think that it's touching the wheel because it is not factory. You can see a lip there being machined. So I think I'm going to have to take the flap disc and take a little meat off of these calipers and go inspect my other wheels that are in the trailer for witness marks or lines. And I'm also going to have to inspect my axle bearings, I think, just to make sure that they're not bad and the axle doesn't have any end play. Also, apparently the corrosion has gotten to my axle hubs because now my brake rotors won't come off. So there's a couple things I gotta heat up and get to figuring out while I wait for my oil to finish draining, and that's gonna be a while. Rear end is back together. Just got to go and put all the nuts and bolts on it, hook up the brake line, get the brake calipers and pads and everything reassembled. I got to shave those calipers down just to be sure that they're not rubbing on the inside of the wheel, especially if an axle bearing decides that it's going to wear out on me or whatever. I didn't find any real issues on that, and I honestly didn't really see anything wrong with the insides either. Wear pattern looked okay. All the internals looked okay, so I think it's just it had to wear in a little bit, and now it's, exactly the same as it was before. So we're going to get back to buttoning everything up. Hopefully the rear end will be done. It is the next day, and I have good news, and I've got mail. What came in was I got some spark plugs, by the way, on Rock Auto, the spark plugs that I use. I'm not giving you the number because I had to dyno test that and figure it out. So you got to figure it out for yourself. They were $1.79 a piece, which is a pretty dang good deal if you ask me. I went to Napa. They were like almost $4 a piece. I also got a box of, wow, it's actually a really big box for valve springs. But I'll tear that open and look at it, make sure that it's correct, because that's a lot. Anyway, I also got this really long box here, which are some rub rails that I can put down the side of the car here and protect the numbers and the decals and a little bit of the body if you make a little contact as well. So I'm going to get to unboxing and moving that stuff around. Then we got to get down underneath the car here and fix up those brake calipers and shave those down a little bit just to clearance them, and put everything back together, hook up brake lines, bleed brakes, get that all set. I also got to bleed the clutch, but that's all hydraulic stuff that I'm going to be doing anyway. So also, that good news that I had mentioned, I have a sponsor returning to the car that I've had for, good grief, 15 years. I'm really bad at math. But I can't actually believe it's been 15 years. I think 2008 was when I kind of started a relationship with them. So, I mean, I'll call it 15. It's not quite 15, but it is close enough. They signed on again. They're going to help me out, and that's great. Anything helps me so much. I mean, $1,000 here and there can make or break my season. So, heck, even $200, even $100, $50 for beer, any of that could make or break my season. So again, enough of me talking. We got to get this work done. Let's get back to it. Rear brakes back together. I even got her bolted back in properly. But I wanted to show you this before I get to work bleeding the brakes. You're wondering how you do it yourself. It's easy. You go to your local auto parts store, get yourself one of these things that constantly bleeds no matter how much you drain out of it. I like it because it says Bleed-O-Matic, like it's some 1950s device meant to cure lumbago or something. But I like it because it's got the tube that runs all the way down to the bottom. Now you can use something else, kind of like this, if it'll come out of here. I don't even know. Nope, ain't coming out. Oh, my shop's a mess. But this is like from a vacuum bleeder. It just doesn't have the tube that runs all the way down. And I found that I get a little bit better result with something where the tube goes to the bottom. Now, when you're using one of these, what you want to do is, when you put it on the brake caliper, you stick the hose on the bleed end, and then you just stick the reservoir higher than the bleed screw. And what that does is the fluid will go up the tube, but it won't pull air back down because the fluid is already there. So all you do is you just kind of put it on, put this up higher like that. Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to do all this one-handed. Please bear with me. But you do something like this. See? And you crack the bleeder, and you just kind of go over, and you pump the pedal a few times, and it'll push fluid and push fluid and push, and it'll fill the reservoir up. And then when you're done, it won't be pulling air back down. It'll just be pulling fluid down, if it even pulls any fluid down. And you just lock her down. Do that to all four corners, and you're good to go. Brakes are bled. Clutch is bled. I got to put the panel back on. I use Zeus fasteners to put this panel on. Yeah, you can see what brake fluid I use. It's not fancy. I use just Willwood 570 because, to be honest, it's a street stock. Yeah, I don't need to go crazy with it. I've known people who do like $100 a quart F1 style racing fluid, and I'm just like, bro, if my brakes get hot, I just pump the pedal twice before going in the corner, and it's fine. I also made this modification to the side window. I've got Zeus fasteners holding that in for easier access to getting into my seat belts when I need to change those. Other than that, we're basically at the point where I just have to finish a little bit of duct work, which I got to just kind of tie the edges in here. It's a little bit of a gap, but luckily there's a flap on the back edge here that I can just, put a little gap here and stick something over the top. It's not going to be too big of a deal. I got to get the engine running again. We're going to need to change the valve springs because I don't know how old they are. And I think we're just going to have to put it on scales because, oh boy, it's time getting short. And being sick for yet another week with that, I forgot what it was, some stomach bug going around and being in the bathroom 30 times. It was just a nightmare. So luckily, we were able to kind of scrounge this thing back together and get it back to a point where it's pretty much ready to go back on the ground. Yeah, like I said, we got decals and we got scales, and that's about it. So those are going to be my next two videos, and then after that, we're going to the track. So thank you all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it, especially hanging in there when I'm not available to work, like when I have COVID or when I'm sick or whatever the case might be. Maybe I'm on vacation. Who knows? That doesn't happen very often. Get your friends to watch. If they're car guys, fans, whatever the case may be, or motorsports fans, or any kind of, car-related stuff, mechanic-related stuff, anything like that, please tell them about my page. Please help me spread this thing through word of mouth. I'm not asking anything more than a subscribe out of anybody, and just to tell your friends. It's free, and it helps me so much on the business end. You have no idea. Again, we are at crunch time, and it is time to get going because we got racing season right around the corner. Thank you all again so much. I appreciate it, and until next time.